Welcome to Hospitality on the Rise, the podcast about the people shaping the hospitality industry and their journeys. I'm your host, Alice Cheng, founder and CEO of Culinary Agents, hospitality's go-to hiring platform, and I'm here to give you your dose of virtual mentorship. Here, we'll be sharing the stories, lessons learned, and advice from hospitality leaders who've carved out their own path to success. After all, this industry is where many get their start and go on to do incredible things. Whether you're a pro, starting out, or just love the hustle, this podcast highlights what makes hospitality extraordinary: the people. We're so excited to have Michael Shemtov with us today. He's a hospitality entrepreneur, founder of Honest to Goodness Hospitality, with locations in Charleston, Atlanta, Nashville, and probably some more exciting things in his back pocket that we can talk about here. But I've known Michael for quite some time, and I'm very lucky to have enjoyed several of his establishments over the years. So thank you very much. But we're here to hear about how it all began and all the incredible things that you've done since. So, Michael, welcome.
Thank you. Excited to be here. I know it's this podcast is about me, not about you, but excited to be here with you. Followed you and Culinary Agents, or CA, as we internally refer to it, for a long time. And it's been awesome to see its growth in the markets that we operate in. We used to be like one of one or two jobs in Nashville, and now there's probably 150 jobs in Nashville. So speaks to the growth in Nashville, but also the growth of the platform, which I've always appreciated. I always thought it's the best caliber of people are on Culinary Agents.
Thank you. Well, that means a lot from one entrepreneur to another, because it's not easy, as you know, and constantly changing and growing. So back to you, because it is about you. How did it all begin?
Yeah, so I think a lot of us have this kind of origin story, like someone that we met along the way, or a conversation that we had, or like, mom took me to a baseball game and I just got inspired when I was young. So for me, it was a cousin who's old enough to be my uncle. He's like early 70s. I'm 47 today. And it's not my birthday today.
But I was going to say.
And so when we moved to the States, I was born in Israel. When we moved to the States, I was my only point of contact with the family from the Middle East was my cousin who lived in California, who was in the restaurant business. So I didn't do summer camps. I just wasn't interested. But in the summer, my parents would send me to visit Cousin Kaduri in Los Angeles. And the run of show with Kaduri would be like, one day was Disney or the beach. The next day was visiting his restaurants. The third day, we would like drive around and check out restaurants that he wanted to check out. And we would eat like snacks and appetizers at 4 different places. And I thought like, wow, this is an awesome life. So he definitely gave me a nudge. He influenced me. My parents are both entrepreneurs as well, not in the restaurant space, but my parents were entrepreneurs. So growing up, like I saw entrepreneurship. And as I was getting ready to graduate college, or as I was kind of my sophomore, junior year in college, and thinking about what I want to do next, like entrepreneurship and opening a restaurant seemed like something that I understood and could do. So I got started really early. I mean, I'd been working in restaurants throughout high school. Like my first job, I think probably 13, was working for a pizza shop. They would drop me at the like front of a neighborhood, and I'd walk and like put a flyer on everybody's door for specials. And then they tell me like an hour from now, and I mean, I'm 47, so this was like 33 years ago. So well before cell phones. So it'd be like, in an hour, we'll pick you up at the front of the next neighborhood. And so that's how I started. Then I was a busboy, and then I like worked my way up through the kitchen at Outback, which back then was like, a leading organization. No comment about today. I'm not saying anything negative or positive about today. I'm just saying back then they were really innovative. So I started as a busboy, worked my way into the kitchen, sort of like I knew restaurants as well as somebody who was 22 could know restaurants, and decided around my sophomore, like into my junior year of college, that I was just going to like put my head down and open a restaurant. What I was saying at the time is I'm going to graduate. I'm going to like walk off the stage and go unlock the doors of my restaurant. And that would be like opening day. I'd like have this transition And so what that meant, I don't expect a lot of the listeners are going to be in college, but basically what that meant was I just declined a lot of party invitations and just basically grinded for 2 years. And opened the restaurant when I was 22. I didn't walk off the stage after graduation, but it was January after I graduated in May. So pretty
Just
quickly.
quick.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's not easy to, just open a restaurant.
Yeah. Yeah. And I was one of the younger people working there in the
Yeah.
area.
But
So
to have that conviction, I mean, that also says, says a lot about, focus and just kind of knowing what you want to do and at the time and who knows, right? That's the risk taking slash ignorance is bliss a little bit.
yeah.
But but okay, so you got your first one going. How
Yeah.
was that?
It was brutal. It was brutal. I mean, we were busy, and I was having problems meeting payroll at the same time. So it was like this weird dichotomy where I'd run into people and they'd say like, "Oh, there's a line out the door every time I drive by," and I'm like, "Yeah, yeah, everything's great." Like you can't really show people. We're all like somewhat bullshitters in restaurant ownership, right? It's like you can't really tell people we're really struggling right now. Like come in, or like you and I are both going to starve. Um, but yeah, it was rough. I mean, 3 years I didn't get paid. I'm not like nobody should be like looking for a Kleenex to shed a tear for me. But I mean, for 3 years I basically wrote a check from the business for rent, and my like only expense was a new pair of shoes every 3 months. I mean, funny enough, I still basically buy a new pair of shoes like once or twice a year, and I just basically wear them until they wear out. But some habits die hard. But yeah, it was really hard. And then when we started getting paid, it was $300 a week, and then that was a year like four, and then maybe like $500 a week. And it took a long time. I mean, we opened the restaurant in 2001, and I think like 7 years later, when I left to go get a job working somewhere else, was when I got close to making like real, I say like real money. What a GM would get paid today in 2025. Um, so yeah, it took a while. I hear people talk about their restaurants and sort of pay all the investors back in 2 years or 3 years. Like I always think like good on them. I haven't found that formula yet. For me, it's like one of the pieces of advice that I give people is like, just don't get into this because you think you're going to make it. It's going to take you like a decade or two to like make it rich. You can get there much faster in a lot of other businesses. So, if you're in it for the right reasons, like you love it, you like cooking for people, you like making people happy, you think there's nobility in service, like all those sort of things. You love farmers. You love, like a friend of mine says about me that she thinks like I was put on earth to move produce through space and time. Like if I showed
I
you my
like that.
fridge here at the house, it's like it just ridiculous. I could cook for 35 people tonight, right? I buy strawberries by the flat, even though we're a family of four. You know, um, so anyway, I just enjoy it. Like if you left me to my own devices, I would just drive around and like buy, you know, I go to the bakery for bread. I go to the fish place for fish. I go to the farm to pick up produce. Like I'm not going to a supermarket unless I need like pasta or grains or something like that. So that's why I'm in it. There's a lot of great reasons to be in hospitality. There's some bad reasons to be in hospitality. And just sort of like you're in it for the wrong reasons, you're going to get burned out, or you're going to be. I was talking to a friend of mine yesterday or 2 days ago who had a bakery. He just sold his all his bakery equipment to somebody, and I told him like I think there's a certain trajectory in bakeries where it's like you start it, you're grinding, and then like 6, 7, 8, 10 years in, you're just like, God, this is just like way too much work for not enough money. And then you sell it to the next person who's at that stage of their career where they're like, I want to do this. I'm going to do something really special. I'm going to mill my own flour. I'm going to like, make the world's best sourdough. And I'm not saying that flippantly. Like, I think that's awesome. And we sort of, you need a cohort of people every 10 years to come in and say that, to keep it going. But there's certain professions in this industry. And I think baking is one of them, which is essentially like buying yourself a job. Like if somebody tells me they want to open a bakery, I tell them, like, I hope you want to be the lead baker and make $50,000 a year for the next decade, because that's likely what's going to happen. Like, you can name, I can name you one person who's gotten rich off a food truck, right? Roy Choi is like, maybe you can name more. You're maybe a little bit more in the industry, but like I can name Roy Choi. So if somebody tells me like they're going to do a food truck to get the brick and mortar, I tend to tell them there's like maybe, a handful of people a year who do that successfully, who do it because the food truck made so much money that they could then afford to go and open a brick and mortar. And so, I'm really passionate about entrepreneurship. I imagine at some point we'll talk some about entrepreneurship. It's definitely not for everybody. So I hope I can offer plenty of advice for people who don't want to start their own business today. But yeah, I think it's important to know like what you're getting into and why you're getting into it. So if you're going to open a restaurant, be at a point in your life where you're prepared to like not take a paycheck for a year.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of similar parallels to like, other startups, like tech startups and, percentage of failure. And, you have to be in it for the right reasons or at least to solve, some problem that you feel really passionate about. And then this constant evolving and changing and then reevaluating and self-reflection, quite frankly, because you gotta keep motivating yourself to keep the engine going, right?
Yeah.
So,
And then that self-reflection also to just understand well what you're not doing well.
mhm.
And so you can either learn it or you can build a team around you that they can execute on those things that you don't like or you're not. Generally, if you like something, you're going to do it well. Right? There's just like there's a quote from Aristotle that used to like hang somewhere in my office. It's like pleasure in the job puts perfection in the work. It's like you don't have to I actually somewhat enjoy. I don't want to say I enjoy like firing people, but I don't. I never shy away from it. If I'm ever in a manager meeting and we're talking about somebody and there's like a lot of hesitation, I'll just raise my hand and I'll say like, I'm like, are they working today? Like, I'll fire them today, because if we're talking about firing somebody, they're not enjoying the job, right? If they're enjoying the job, they're probably doing very well, or they're like acquiring skills quickly that will lead to them doing very well. Like if we're talking about firing them, they are likely just haven't found the courage yet to quit and figure out where else they want to work instead. And so sometimes people just need a nudge in that direction. I think like fondly about people that I've fired who've then gone on to open their own restaurants or who've gone on to like very successful careers elsewhere. And I'm not like, oh man, that was a miss. We fired a chef and look at how great he is doing elsewhere. Like awesome for them. They found a place where they were really happy. They weren't really happy with us. If they were happy, we would have never been in that. We would be promoting them, not firing them. A little bit out of sequence, but I gave some thought to this conversation before, and one of the things I think we run into a lot in the restaurant business, or folks run into a lot. Hopefully, not in our organization, but and I do think the industry is getting much better at this, and I think there's a lot more transparency and a lot more like honesty. But I know one thing that we run into a lot is people that say, well, I took this job, I was promised X, I was told I would be the culinary director and I'd just be doing R&D. And now like a chef got fired at one of the concepts, and now I'm expected to be the chef over there 5 days a week and do R&D. And I'm now closing a few nights a week when I was told I'd have a daytime job. Or like I was told I'd start as a host and I'd get moved up to server, but it's been 6 months and I still am hosting. And now I'm being told I'm a really good host. And so they don't want to move me from the host. So there's a lot of that. And so one of my pieces of advice that I hope people take away is like, there's no harm in putting things in writing. And in fact, like when we tell somebody, hey, take a job with us, like you'll start at 50,000 just to throw it around number. You start at 50. I understand you want to make 55. This business can't afford to pay you 55 right now. You start at 50, but when we hit this level of sales, or when we get to March, when sales pick up, we'll automatically bump you. And a lot of times people say, well, I've heard that before. Like, how do I know that you're going to, and I tell them like, let's put it in writing. There's nothing wrong. Very few restaurant jobs start with a written contract, but there's nothing wrong if you're out there and you are capable and you're smart and you want to build a career in hospitality, and somebody tells you like start at X, start at the host stand, we'll move you to server. Start at 50, we'll bump you to 55. Like, In 3 months, we'll roll out a bonus program. Ask them to put it in writing and like have a signed contract. If you go back with a signed contract and you say, hey, look, we discussed this, and then we papered it up so that we would make sure that our understanding was the same, and we're not there. And so let's have a productive conversation together about how we can get there. I understand a lot of things happen. I understand people left. I understand I'm crushing at the host stand, whatever. But let's have a conversation about how to get there. I think that there is more of that from the talent pool would be welcome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And important to highlight your example, which is it's a mechanism to have a productive conversation, not a, you know, demand of sorts, right? Because things change and you know, I like to operate with, you know, people have the best intentions and, you know, people get busy, et cetera.
Yeah.
So it's also a good reminder because sometimes, and there's turnover, right? Maybe the conversation was had with somebody and that person is no longer there or in that position, and now you're having a conversation with a different person.
Yeah.
I think that's valuable for talent. Also, it's kind of part of the navigation of your own career. Like these are skills, these are conversations, communication that will ultimately benefit you, you know, future conversations and when you have your own businesses.
And the reality is, if you're talking to an employer who doesn't want to paper it up, that's a good red flag for you right then to walk away. Because if they're
Yeah.
not willing to commit, if they're not willing to put in writing your mutual understanding, um, you know, that tells you something about how they operate. And that's something that would be helpful to know before you take the job on the promise that you'll be promoted or given a raise at some future point. So yeah, I mean, one of the things that we try to do as a company is just elevate the standard. So everything from like having offer letters to if we ask somebody to like start at X and we'll bump into Y, like giving them that on paper, um, to offering benefits, including like a 401k or retirement savings program. We have a like paternity, maternity program. And like part of why we offer them is for the good of the staff, but part of why we offer them is because I hope that in some small way we can nudge the industry forward, because I want everybody who's worked for us to, when they're applying for a job, to say like, is there a retirement savings plan here? And if a manager hears that over and over and over, they're going to go to the owner and they're going to say, hey, we need to think about a retirement savings program because people keep asking about it in interviews, and maybe we're missing on some of the best people that we could hire. So like the reason why we offered health insurance, we started offering health insurance, I think in 2003 or 2004, like well before the ACA, right? Like before Obama was the freshman senator from Illinois, much less the president, because people that we interviewed kept asking, like, what are the benefits? And I would tell them, like, well, I can get you concert tickets and like we do staff meals. And I'd give them like, you know, 7 benefits. And they'd say like, well, what about health insurance? You know? And so I realized that like the benefits question was really just like, do y'all offer health insurance? And I got tired of saying no and disappointing people. So I just like had a conversation with my partners and I was like, we got to figure this out. Like when people say, what are the benefits? We should respond, we have a great benefits package, you know, like you're eligible for health insurance on day one and we pay for half of it. And it's not like this BS stripped down plan that's just meant to check a box. Like it's actually really good. And there's a mental health component and other things. Like we should just figure this out so we can win those interviews. And so I guess we're like 20 years into offering health insurance now.
Amazing.
And we're, I think, like 3 years into passing part of that on to the guests. So one of the other things that we do is we have a we just bumped it, it's like 2.2% now. It was 2% for a long time, just to like a little internal sausage making. It wasn't quite enough funds to do everything we wanted to do. And so we bumped it to 2.2 because my thesis was people probably won't even notice. And if they're fine paying 2, they'd be fine paying 2.2. And on, you know, $15 million of sales, 0.2 is like a not insignificant number. But yeah, we started passing that on, and like in that vein of transparency and trying to move that industry forward, I talked to some restaurateurs about it because I think when we launched it, we were the first place that I know of in Charleston that did it. And we may still be the only place that adds a line item to the bill in Charleston. And I think same in Nashville, in the Bay Area, it's very common. And I think like 4 to 6% is common.
Yeah.
I don't know where it is in New York. I know a few people tried it and it kind of flopped miserably for them. But when I talked to other restaurateurs about it, the feedback I got was like, just bump your prices up 50 cents, like nobody will notice. And that's probably more than 2%. And like, why would you print on your menu that you're charging people extra? And my response was like, I'm trying to spark a conversation with the guest about benefits in restaurants. Like, I want guests to go to restaurants and say, I love my meal. I love eating here. By the way, do they offer you health insurance? And if the server says no, I want them to ask for the manager or the owner and say, I love coming here. I'm a regular, but I would feel better about coming here if you offered health insurance for the staff. And I understand that you may need to bump your prices, and I'm willing to do it because I think that restaurant employees should have health insurance. I don't think that they should be like a broken ankle away from bankruptcy. So um, do me a favor and look at a health insurance program, and just know that every time I come here and dine, I'm going to ask for you, and I'm going to ask you if you have health insurance yet. And if this keeps going for month after month, I will probably come dine here less. Like, if we could get that, if we could get guests to participate, in the same way that I'm saying, like, if we could get hospitality workers to think about negotiating and asking for these things, and I'm not saying like demand it, but let the employer know that part of your decision making process is the benefits package, or part of your decision making process is, are they willing to put on paper what they're telling you that they're going to offer you in the future? Are they willing to sort of commit to at least committing to working towards it? So
Yeah, and one other thing which you'll probably be happy to hear, as we looked at the data through culinary agents over the years, we did notice more businesses offering benefits in the form of, health insurance and dental and those types of benefits, in addition to, whatever dining discounts and things that they were offering. And that was a indicator, and most likely an indicator that those conversations were happening more and more, because the priorities of the conversations that they were having with candidates were changing, and businesses had a moment to take a step back and reevaluate to see what they could offer, right? What they could do.
mhm. Yeah, once we get to critical mass, then the holdouts. And by the way, I assume goodwill on everybody's part. I don't think anybody's cynically holding out. Like, it is like, I don't know if you allow cursing on the, so you may beat this out, but like, it's fucking expensive. It is like really expensive. Like, I was looking at Fancy Pants, which is our newest restaurant. We have a pretty small staff there. We're only open 4 days a week. I wanted to experiment with, can we make a model work open 4 days a week? And so I think probably in total it's less than 25 people there. And the health insurance bill there is over $5,000 a month. And right now that represents like a material amount. We're not doing $500,000 in sales there in 4 nights. So I mean, it's a material amount. It's not more than rent, but it's not that far away from what we pay in rent. So, again, we do charge the 2.2% fee, which offsets that somewhat, but it doesn't cover it. And that's also not the only benefit. We also have the 401k and the other, benefits, dental, vision, which we pay 100% for. We pay about 75% or 70% of the insurance bill. One of the things that we thought would be really magic if we could get to it, and we did a couple years ago, was it's like right at $25 a week for our staff for health insurance. So we thought that would be like a really magic number. And we have, I think, like out of about 110 eligible full-time employees, I think like 85 are in our health insurance program, which the last insurance person that I spoke with said in like 30 years, that's like one of the 3 best participation rates he's ever seen in a restaurant. So anyway, it's a lot of work, just like anything in the business. But
Yeah, would you say this is one of the, like, you obviously went from one location or one business, one concept to multiple. And would you say this was kind of one of the big lessons learned, or it's not even lessons learned, it's really like the revelation and then the change that was part of the evolution and growth of your group? Or what were some of the other kind of aha moments?
Into the aha moments in terms of growing.
Yeah, of like, okay, that's a growing pain, right? Oh,
Yeah,
we're here. This is the feedback we're getting, and we want to remain competitive and take care of our team and all that. What can we do? How
yeah,
do we make this happen?
yeah. Um, well, I think we've always been. I it's like very early. I'm like super nerdy, and I read a lot. It's like if the question starts like, "Have you seen?" Like, no, I probably haven't seen it. But if the question starts like, "Have you read?" Like, there's a decent chance that I read it. So I read a bunch of like academic research about what's called the service profit chain, meaning like if you make your employees happy, they'll make the customers happy. And so very early on, like in my career as a restaurant owner, I came to understand that like my job was employee satisfaction. And actually, it's taken me a very long time, but we just launched our first company-wide survey where we are going to measure employee satisfaction. And
Oh, wow.
I'll share with with you because I think you may find it interesting. We're not asking people how happy they are. We're asking them how likely their colleagues are to still be with us in 6 months. Because my thesis is that people will project their own happiness onto their colleagues and they'll give us a more honest, even though it's anonymous, I think we'll get a more honest answer if we say, like, how likely do you think your like average coworker is? You know, how likely do you think the person on the shift with the people on the shift with you today are to still be here in 6 months? I think they will likely answer with their own level of likelihood of being there in 6 months. And so we've rolled out the survey, and the plan is to do it 3 times a year and then be able to measure sort of how our culture is improving or degrading over time. So if we see that like multiple surveys in a row we're moving backwards, we can start looking like very closely at what's driving that. But but yeah, so very early on, I realized it's like the staff needs to be happy. Now, I will say sometimes, and I think it's important. Like one of the lessons that I learned was the very first time that we did $40,000 in a week in my first restaurant was a pizzeria, and we were just in the like low 30s forever. And we had this one just like breakout week. I don't think we'd ever done more than like 36 or 37, and then we did like 41 and everybody was exhausted and everybody was like at each other's throats. You know, there's just like everybody was angry with their colleagues. And I walked out that Sunday night just feeling like beat. And I thought to myself, you know what? This is what it feels like to do 40,000 here in a week. This is like 2001 or two. So it was a long time ago. Just inflation would have made that a $55,000 a week. Um, some people listening may be doing 20,000 in a day at their place of business. So I don't want to sound like we're a little podunky. But and so I just realized, okay, like this feeling is part and parcel of being this busy, right? And so the reason why I say that is because just earlier this week, I read an email. One of my colleagues sent an email. He said, "I think that the like morale with the front of house staff is low." Actually, he's not a great speller, so he said like we have a moral dilemma where or moral issue where he meant to say morale issue. So the subject of the email was like, "Oh shit, what's going on? We got a moral issue at the restaurant." There's a morale issue, and so you know, he had some suggestions, which I appreciate. One of the things that we build into our culture is like, don't come to us with a problem without also having at least a suggestion for a solution or outlining what you've done to try to think through a solution, even if you haven't gotten to it. And so he came to us morale issue. And one of the things I said to him in response is like, this doesn't lessen the need to address it, but also just think about where we are in a year. You know, of course, morale's low. Like people have not been making money, the money that they need to make for the last 8 weeks. They haven't been getting the hours that they need to get for the last 8 weeks. Like it snowed and we were closed. Like we had 1 week that we were only open one day. You know, like of course people aren't going to be down. You know, like there's no night of karaoke that we can take them to that's going to make them feel better about not being able to save money this month or take a vacation next month that they were hoping to make. So, you know, some of it is just timing. And I've learned to be very selective on who I say that to because one time I said that to like a large group of people. I just said, well, this is a phase that we're sort of moving through. And like, trust me, in a couple of weeks, it's going to be spring. We're going to be busier. Tips will be up. Everybody will feel better. And I got a lot of pushback on that, rightfully so. Because I didn't mean to like demean it. I just meant to put it in context of like where it is. So I don't even know how we got to this thread.
Well, yeah, we're talking about just lessons learned and just,
Yeah,
evolution of business, right? Growing a business, having a business, managing people in a highly seasonal driven, industry
Yeah.
that has a lot of twists and turns and unexpected things that can, happen on a dime. So, I think that adds another layer of complexity to the entrepreneurship journey, right? It's
Hmm.
it's volatile enough as it is, and owning small businesses and growing, but then layer on top of that the unpredictability and potential ebbs and flows of hospitality. That's like next level.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think a lot of times it's like know what you're getting into. So like I would tell the listeners like understand that working at a hotel might come with a level of bureaucracy that you don't like, especially on the culinary side, right? But it's also going to come with probably a very robust benefits package, and probably the hours will be better. I've never worked at a hotel, so I'm not saying that the schedule will be better for your life. I'm just saying the hours will probably be more consistent. The number of layers between somebody that's saying it's the slow season and we need to cut hours and somebody actually making the schedule is probably 7, right? Versus 1 in an independent restaurant. I might even be the
Yeah.
same person sort of looking at the sales in the bank account and writing the schedule in an independent restaurant. So you're going to get some consistency. You're going to get some things. It's sort of a different business. And so if you don't love, now, we do believe like our staff did not sign up for the entrepreneurial ride unless they wanted to be a partner, right? Like they took a job and they expect consistency, and it's our job to provide them as much consistency as we can. But I also think for the applicant, like understanding where you're applying. If you're applying at a new restaurant or one that's like a year or two old, it's not a landmark, it's not a mainstay, you may not get that consistency, but you're going to get all the fun of the chaos of figuring things out in a new restaurant. And you may get promoted faster because, I think the success rate for a GM in a new restaurant is probably 50%, right? So, like, if you take an AGM job in a new restaurant, you get a pretty good chance of being the GM within 6 months or a year. That is probably not going to happen if you take an AGM job at a hotel or a hotel restaurant, right? So, I mean, there may be other opportunities for you in the group, but it's not going to be. So, just understand what you're signing up for, and like be very not selective, but be very mindful and like purposeful about where you apply. Actually, like when people ask me for advice about resumes, one of the things that I tell them is that it's just hard to understand how little time most people spend looking at resumes. They're just glancing and they're like, maybe they're going to spend 30 seconds deciding if they're going to spend 5 minutes on it. Right. And so, like, one piece of advice I give people is like, if you really want a job at Le Bernardin, make the objective on your resume say, to obtain a position in the front of house at Le Bernardin and bring my personal standard of excellence to this world-class establishment where I can both benefit the restaurant and benefit my career by learning and growing, right? That's at the very top. Your objective is at the very top of your resume. Like if you put that on your resume and you apply to Le Bernardin, you're going to get called in for an interview, like period. And if you don't, just resend it and go like set up a Gmail address that's like I want to work at Le Bernardin at Gmail and send your resume from that email address and you will get an interview. Like it's really not that. I mean, it's not that easy, but it's not that hard. But a lot of people just have this like corporate goobly gop of like just like words that don't actually really mean anything as their objective. Um, and so I think, tailoring your resume is one of the like top pieces of advice that I give for people.
Yeah, I think, in just in what we've talked about here, a lot of it is know what you're getting into, right? Do your research, do your homework, talk to folks, experience whatever you can, and be thoughtful about, where you're applying and understand why you want to do it. For I want to kind of tap into this entrepreneurship thing again because you've been doing this for a long time. So I want to get all the nuggets. For someone who's like, I want to open my own restaurants. I've been working in the restaurant industry. I've already decided this is my jam. I'm in it, but I don't know how to take the next step. Do you have any kind of aha moments or words of advice?
Yeah, I do. Thanks for asking the question. I think that any reasonable the kind of restaurants that the people on culinary agents are going to want to open are generally not going to be like a hole in the wall without a hood, walk-up window spot. If it is, awesome. You may be able to like put together enough money from friends and family for that. If you don't have friends and family who are going to write you a $500,000, $1 million check, or go to their bank with you and get a loan, help you get a loan, really your most viable pathway is to partner with somebody. And actually, I think that, there's that adage that like every cook wants to be a chef and every chef wants to go back to being a line cook. And, most people that I know that have 4, 5, 10, 15 restaurants, like wish they just had one and that they could work expo or host or work the floor or work the pass. And most people that have one want to have 6. And so there's a little something to that, but partnering with somebody who has 3, 4, 5, 6, and especially has a demonstrated history of partnering people in. So we have at Fancy Pants, our newest restaurant, my managing partner, Jake Mogelson, is a 50% partner. Like I don't own the other 50%. I own less than 50%. At Red-Headed Stranger, it's me and my chef partner, and we're 50-50, right? Neither one of these people put in a significant amount of capital up front. They didn't get to 50% because they had half the money. They got to 50% because they demonstrated to me that they are willing to go and do the work, and that my life would be better if I partnered with them, and they had a material percentage, right? One of the lessons that I learned, my very first chef partner, he got 5%. And 2 years later, he went and took a different job that paid twice as much, right? And my realization was like 5% of a restaurant that size. Now, maybe if you're at Steven Starr restaurant and you're doing $10 million a year and dropping $1 million to the bottom line, 5% 50,000, that's a nice chunk of change. But a restaurant of our size, like 5% was not enough to keep them around. And it was a big loss and it was a lesson learned. So now when we partner people in, we require them to buy 10% or 15% or 25 or something more. But if somebody's telling you, yeah, we can do this, I'll do this, but they don't have a history of doing it, then beware, or like I said earlier, like make them paper it up. Have an agreement on paper that this is the path that you're going on. Recently, we recruited somebody to come to join us at Fancy Pants. He applied for the chef position. He was actually a very, very good candidate, but we ended up offering the position to somebody else. And so we called this person and we said, like, would you take the number 2 role? Like the pay is not that much different. And if you prove yourself there, like we do have other restaurants that we want to open in Nashville. And so you would be basically at the front of the line for doing something together next. We're not going to promise a timetable. It might be 2 years, it might be 3 years. It's not going to be 6 months. Like it's not, we're just not cranking out restaurants that quickly. So I don't have a project yet, but I can tell you that we want to do a project. And he thought about it and he ended up passing on a job. And he said, he really needed to make X, again, just round numbers, I think 75, let's say 75. He really wanted to get paid 75. And that position that we offered him was like maybe 65 or 67 or something like that. And he said like, and he told us, I really want to open up my own restaurant in a couple of years. And so I have to take it. I can't make less than 75 in order to do it. And he didn't listen to me, which is great. Like his prerogative. I'm not saying he was wrong. He has his own calculus. But my advice to him and the advice I give people is like $10,000 more a year in pay is not going to get you your own restaurant. Like that, it's going to take you 20 years of making $10,000 more to have 200,000, assuming you saved every bit, right? Like your best path, his better path would have been to work with us or somebody like us, take less, but have an opportunity to partner in. So really look for those businesses. If you do want to open up your own restaurant, look for those businesses, look for those companies that do it. Like Boca's partnered lots of chefs in. Yep. Some of them have multiple restaurants. That companies, they don't have to be Boca. I mean, I think Boca's a great group. I've never worked for them, so I don't know what it's like inside, but I admire the people behind it. Look for groups that are maybe it's not Boca, but look for groups who will tell you, I look up to Boca. I want to run our business like that. In terms of, again, I don't know what it's like on the inside. But in terms of, we find great chefs and we partner with them and we open up concepts that they lead and drive. Like Redheaded Stranger in Nashville is Chef Brian's vision. It's his childhood stories. It's the food that he grew up eating. It's the food that he wants to cook. Fancy Pants is a front of house hospitality creative oriented partner. It was his dining room. He made the design decisions. I think it's awesome space, and I'm happy for it. But like, I trusted him to do those things. And so look for businesses, look for companies that want to find great people and want to lead there. Don't look for the company where it's a genius, somebody who thinks they're a genius and they come up with all the concepts and they're just looking for people to execute. Again, unless that's what you're looking for. If you're like, I'm not creative, I don't want to do that. But one of the things I would say is, if you don't partner with a group, you're going to have to be responsible for so much that you may not want to do. And your world is going to be finance and HR, especially if you're one restaurant, right? Like, so if you just are passionate about cooking, or you're passionate about wine or hospitality, like, find the group that can put those other pieces around you so you can focus on those things that really you're passionate about, because that's what's ultimately going to drive success.
Yeah. Well, that's great advice, and then also go work for them for a little bit, right? Because
Yeah.
you don't know until you know.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely. Absolutely. A lot of places, I mean, a lot of the people that I think of as like giants of the industry, if I'm at a food festival and I meet the chefs and we go have drinks or dinner, you find out that it's not as glossy on the inside as it looks on the outside. And so, and that's not, again, I don't know, it's one person's story. So, and I'm not naming anybody. I'm just saying it's not always what you see on the outside. So yes, go work with somebody. You're going to find out pretty quickly who they are. Look for people who are very consistent year over year, day after day. Like, this business is full of ups and downs. Like, I talk about restaurant ownership. It's like having a pair of pants with a bunch of holes in the pocket. Like, all day long, little bits of change are falling out. The water heater breaks. Somebody steals your really nice pepper grinder that costs hundreds of dollars. This happens, that happens. It's going to be bumpy. So like, find the people who can weather that emotionally, because otherwise it's going to be really difficult to work with them. Like, we're looking at, so Fancy Pants is our newest restaurant, also the first fine dining. And we're not quite at break even there, but we're also like just about to hit the busier season and all the trends are positive. But we're looking at a break even analysis yesterday. And my partner said to me, like, boy, this is like our weekly break even number is a higher number than I thought it would be. Like, I thought that we would be solidly profitable with that number. And we're saying that need that number to break even. And my response was like, even though it's my 10th restaurant and 25 years of doing it, like, we still made the same mistakes. We still thought you could do it with less labor than it takes. We still thought that our COGS are great, labor's high. We still thought, we just made certain assumptions that are just not true. It's going to take some marketing and advertising to get to these sales numbers that we thought that maybe we could get to without any. So it's just, you always think it's going to be faster and less expensive than it ends up being. Even like, if you just came out of a project that was over budget and over timeline, your next one you think is going to be on budget and on time. So just sort of know that going in, and steel yourself for it. And maybe don't let the highs, like, don't get fooled by the highs, and just know that, like, if it's a rough week or a rough month or a rough P&L or a rough overrun, like, it's going to be okay. Just like, head down, focus on what's happening inside the four walls. You'll get through it.
I love it. I love it. Thank you. On
Yeah.
that note, we're going to go into some quick fire.
All right, let's do it.
All right. First one. What advice would you tell your younger self?
I mean, don't get in the restaurant business. I have a few other, like, I almost traded stocks. I was like passionate about stock trading. I'm still, like, this morning I was like watching the stock market. So, I don't know. It's been challenging. I mean, I met my wife through the restaurant business, a lot of great friends. I'm very happy I did. I wouldn't give my younger self that advice. I think I would give my younger self the advice of, just don't let the ups and downs influence you as much. Just sort of like, understand this is a ride that's going to look like a roller coaster, and and just enjoy the down, because it's what makes the up feel. So it's why you feel so alive on a busy shift, is because you maybe had the off season with slower shifts.
What's your advice for someone struggling in the industry?
To understand what it is, do some reflection on why they're struggling. Are you in the wrong position, in the wrong company, um, or is it something structural about the industry that's making you unhappy? Uh, we had a GM once that just basically had like a mental snap, and checked themselves into a facility. And when he felt better, he came back and he wanted to work for us again. And I was ready to bring him right back, because to me, it's like, I don't know. I always want to treat people with grace and understanding. But my directive opposite at the time was very adamant that we not. And I didn't understand until she explained to me that, like, the things that triggered them and the things that made him unhappy are still there. They're just part and parcel of the industry. And so, like, bringing him back is doing a disservice to him. So I think sort of understanding why you're unhappy, and is it just a change of scene? Do you need, you could be unhappy because you're not learning. You could be unhappy because you feel like the place you're working isn't fulfilling what they promised you that they would. Or you could be unhappy because you've just, it's okay if you've outgrown the industry. Like, it's not for everybody all the time. And it'll be here for you if you decide to come back, right? Like,
Yep.
nobody penalizes you for trying something else and coming back to restaurants. In fact, like, we run to hire those people.
Yeah. One of the very many benefits of working in this industry. And lastly, what's your advice for fellow hospitality leaders?
Have real conversations with people in power about immigration, because as good as culinary agents is at helping us find good people, like, we're not going to solve our staffing issues without fixing immigration. And deporting people, whatever your like politics are, is inflationary, and it's going to like make it even harder for us to find people, and it's going to drive up our cost of labor, which personally, I think that like labor costs going up during the pandemic was a very healthy thing for the industry. Like, people should not have been cooking for $12 and $13 an hour. Like, it's great that you can now be a line cook and afford to live in a like reasonable apartment, reasonably close to work. I know that's probably not the case in New York. So it's not like lost on me that it's not everywhere, but certainly I think in our restaurants, you can afford to live, like, maybe not in the neighborhood, but very close to it. And you have a pay that doesn't put you below the poverty level. And I think that's like a welcome thing. But I also think we need to work on like real immigration reform, because for all the openings that we have, there's like lots of people out there with passion and desire to learn who could come step right into those roles and fill them. So I think it's, I think that one of my hopes is that with this immigration crackdown, it leads to a disruption of services that people took for granted, and it opens their eyes into how much work is being done by immigrants, some of whom, or many of whom, may be undocumented, some of whom don't know what percentage. I'm just trying to say that there's a lot of people out there who are living in the shadows, who are making our lives what they are now. And the human cost of the immigration, of deportations, is not lost on me, and I don't want to minimize it. But my like hope for a silver lining is that the people who are pushing for it start to realize that when they try to make a hotel reservation, the hotel is only running at 50% capacity because they don't have staff, or the restaurant raising their prices because their labor costs have gone up, or that other things are happening that are like second and third order consequences that they really don't like. And that helps facilitate a real conversation in this country where we stop, either sort of standing in the streets with signs to protest deportations, or like cheering on deportations and like wanting to see live video feeds of them. Like, we need to move to like a real conversation about the work that needs to get done in the country and the value that immigrants have and add, especially to the restaurant business. I know
Absolutely.
that wasn't like a rapid fire answer to a rapid fire
Yeah,
question.
hey, it's a important conversation. So thank you for sharing. And on that note, Michael, thank you so much for your time. It continues to be a pleasure to watch you and your teams grow. And, I, for one, learned a couple of things on this conversation and looking forward to continuing it with you and your teams. So thank you again and hope to see you soon.
My pleasure. I enjoyed it. I could have gone on for another hour,
Yeah,
but
same,
yeah, I
same.
enjoyed it. And, I just really can't say enough like good things about culinary agents. And I think I will leave with this. Like, if you're out there as a hospitality worker, like look for positions on culinary agents. Like smart restaurateurs know that that's where the best people are looking. You will get priority like if we have a candidate apply on Indeed and we have a candidate apply on culinary agent, we're looking at those people in vastly different ways. Like one of you has sought out the top site in the industry where the top restaurants are posting. It's sort of like if you went to a great culinary school, doesn't necessarily make you a great cook, but it just tells me that you're passionate, or a great hospitalitarian. It just tells me that you're passionate and you care enough to have applied and paid and gone and gotten through the best schools in the country, right? So culinary agents is that for job seekers.
Thank you,
I've told you
Michael.
before I can make ads for you.
We'll talk offline about that. On that note, thank you again.
Yep.
Remember, success looks different for everyone in hospitality. No two paths are the same. If you have a leader or a topic you want to hear about, email media@culinaryagents.com. Hospitality on the Rise is brought to you by Culinary Agents, connecting top talent with employers since 2012. Whether you're hiring or looking for your next opportunity, join us at culinaryagents.com. For more inspiration, subscribe to Hospitality on the Rise and visit hospitalitycareerpaths.com, a free platform by Culinary Agents. Until next time, keep rising!